So, as we've just seen, Trident is very much a live issue. Only yesterday, the leader of the GMB, Britain's third largest union, told Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn that his members would not go quietly if Labour decided to vote against Trident. Tonight, for this debate, we're delighted to have with us in the studio a spokesperson for the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, Sara Meddy-Jones, and the Minister of State for Defence Procurement, Philip Dunn. So, Philip, let's start with you. Trident is a Cold War weapons system designed for the Cold War. Why do we need it now?
Well, as your clip has just shown, Ros, it's a very live issue today because the government only at the end of last year completed our national security strategy review, which was a 5-year update of the threat posture facing this country. The first duty of government is to protect the security of our citizens at home and abroad, and as a result of that review we concluded that the world is a darker place than it was 5 years ago when we last undertook such a review in 2010, and it's very clear that we need to maintain the full spectrum of response to deter potential aggressors, and that includes at the extreme end the Trident system, and in this particular case what we're talking about, what the Prime Minister was referring to, is a decision to renew the Vanguard class of nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed submarines, what we're calling Successor. And as was also made clear in the clip, this takes a long time to build. These are the most complicated pieces of engineering made in this country.
Is that why they cost so much?
And that's one of the reasons why they cost so much, because they're very complex and they take a long time to build, and the existing class of Vanguard submarines will go out of service in the 2030s, so we need to get on and make the decision to replace them.
Now, Sara, you completely disagree with this. CND has always been against nuclear weapons in principle.
Yes, and it's interesting that Philip just referred to the government security strategy from last year, because in that very same strategy, a nuclear attack from another state remained a Category 2 threat. So the government doesn't actually believe that this is an immediate threat facing us today. Instead, in that Tier 1 threat, we saw terrorism, cyber attacks, pandemics. These are all things that need more investment, and Trident, a nuclear weapons system, will not protect us from those.
But isn't the world becoming more dangerous as more countries decide that they actually do want nuclear weapons? There are plenty of would-be nuclear powers around.
But if we're replacing a nuclear weapons system, we're showing the world that to be safe, to be secure, that's what you need. Instead, we need to look at diplomacy and negotiation in the way that the government successfully concluded a deal with Iran last year. That's real security. That's discussing, that's negotiation.
But do you think you can have diplomatic relations with North Korea?
Iran was in the axis of evil only a decade ago, the same place that North Korea is. We won't know unless we peacefully go to the negotiation table.
There's obviously a place for diplomacy in all international relations. It's critical that we maintain channels with countries all around the world to minimise the threat. But the point you were making, Sara, about being a Tier 2 threat, as I've just explained, it takes over a decade to commission and build a new alternative. So we don't have time to take the risk in case events change over the lifetime of these systems, which is several decades. You have to have the event. If we were to move to a posture where the state-on-state threat to this country was to elevate, and who's to say what's going to happen over the next 3 decades, 4 decades, we can't take that risk in our view, because there won't be any opportunity if we haven't made the decision now to be able to respond should the ultimate response be required.
But of course, the point is, Philip, that some people would argue that, as Sara has said, that simply having nuclear weapons makes other countries want them and makes things worse.
Well, as we've just seen in the last week, and as you said in the clip earlier, North Korea has exploded, it seems like a hydrogen bomb. They have a very clear determination to gain capability. This is the 4th explosion they've set off in the last 10 years or so. So that is happening irrespective of our posture. We, as a coalition government before the present Conservative government, have made a determination in 2010 to reduce our stockpile of nuclear weapons in the hope that this might encourage other nations who are existing nuclear powers to reduce theirs. There are some 17,000 nuclear warheads out there around the world at the moment in the countries that have been identified, and not a single country chose to respond to that by reducing its stockpile.
But, Sara, you want there to be no nuclear weapons. You consider that at CND that nuclear weapons, like chemical weapons, should never be used in warfare.
Yes, we've banned chemical weapons, we've banned biological weapons. The next logical step is to ban nuclear weapons, which, let's not forget, is a weapon that will indiscriminately kill millions of people. Just one of the bombs that Britain has would kill 8 times the people that were killed in Hiroshima. And you can't attack a specific enemy, a specific camp, a specific target. You would, by its very nature, kill millions of innocent people.
And that's the principle of the ultimate strategic deterrence. It's that the threat of an attack on this country would by maintaining a continuous at sea deterrence posture, make it clear to anybody who is thinking of sending a nuclear weapon in our direction that there would be a response of similar or comparable force against them, and that in itself should deter them from doing so. That's why we have the deterrent, because it provides that level of response.
Sarah, what about the effect on jobs? I mean, we've heard only yesterday the GMB, Britain's third largest union, explaining that they're going to call a conference of nuclear workers, and they are going to fight any attempt by the Labour Party to change its policy, for instance, on Trident, and they're very pro-Trident. So you've got unions, I know, that support you, but you've also got unions who are against you.
Of course, and there are jobs that are associated with the nuclear weapon system. But when you look at it, this is a £100 billion project to replace Trident, and it's sustaining maybe up to 10,000 jobs. And of course, those jobs are important. But with the right programme of defence diversification, those highly skilled people could work on another sector. They could build conventional ships, they could even move to the renewable energy sector.
But is that really likely? I mean, the GMB is saying it's naive to think that you can conjure up technological jobs out of nowhere to replace the jobs that would go if the nuclear industry was downsized.
There's no question that Barrow-in-Furness, where the submarines are manufactured, at a cost of 30, we've just upgraded the cost, it's actually 31 billion plus a 10 billion contingency to be spent over 35 years. So it's a very long project. It's obviously expensive, but when you average it over the period, it's affordable. Barrow-in-Furness is heavily dependent on these jobs. There are some 5,000 people working there. It'll go up to 8,000 during the course of the construction programme. There are a further 8,000 people at Faslane. It's the largest employment where the nuclear submarines are based, largest employment site in Scotland. About 30,000 people through the supply chain engaged in this endeavour. That is a huge contributor to the economy, and that's why the GMB are very, quite rightly in my view, concerned to ensure that we maintain that capability in this country.
But it's unhealthy, for these communities to be so reliant on one sector. And it's actually a small number of jobs compared to what you could get if you invested it in a different sector. For example, we've got studies that show if you invested that money in the housing sector, it's about 60,000 jobs as well as providing homes. So the government should be more open-minded, should look at what else these highly skilled people could be used for.
Well, and we're investing enormous sums in the housing sector right now. The plan is to build 200,000 homes during the course of this Parliament, starter homes, as well as the
But that's
the
millions
open
you're
market.
talking about, not billions for housing.
No, it'll be billions of pounds for housing over the course of this Parliament.
But what about those who argue that this is ethically wrong, Philip Dunn?
Well, I think there is a perfectly respectable case to be made for people who don't want to use weapons in any context, of any kind of weapons. And the point that Sarah was making about the destructive power of nuclear weapons is clearly, at the extreme end of this. Nobody goes into the manufacturing of this process anticipating that we will be intending to use them. It's the whole purpose of deterrent is that we will not have to use it.
The whole argument about deterrence is another whole issue. But just finally, Philip, what happens next? There's going to be another vote in Parliament.
Yes, so the Prime Minister's committed to a vote in Parliament. I can't tell you when it will be. Here we are at the beginning of 2016. It's anticipated it's likely to be this year because we need to get on and make the main investment decisions during the course of the year.
Sarah, last word.
What we say at C&D, it's a strategically irrelevant, immoral, hugely expensive weapon of mass destruction, and we want everyone out there to get in touch with their MPs, get mobilised and show that we don't need Trident.
But you say that you want to get mobilised and get people mobilised, but the problem is that you've been around for 60 years now and you've never succeeded in getting the British people to come out against nuclear weapons.
I think it's a crucial time now, and I think we're seeing huge amounts of public opinion changing against Trident. There's also a legitimacy argument of Scotland being the host nation of this nuclear weapon system, and 57 of Scotland's 59 MPs are wholeheartedly opposed to this.
And there's overwhelming support in the 3 parliamentary votes that we've had, 2 last year, 1 in 2007, in favour of replacing Trident. It was a manifesto commitment of the Conservative Party, which secured an outright majority across the UK, and opinion polling over the last 12 months maintains a consistent majority in favour of renewing the Trident system.
There are opinion polls against as well, and I think MPs need to consider the views of the people they speak to on the streets, we speak to on the streets.
We consider the views, in particular, of those who elected us, and the majority of the MPs in Parliament were elected by majorities in favour of Trident. So I think it is going to be a challenge for those opponents of Trident to make their case, particularly in Parliament.
And of course, the Labour Party is divided, and that means that you'll have some Labour MPs who'll probably vote with you.
The Labour position on Trident is in a complete mess at the moment. It is clear every day we read about differences of opinions at the senior levels. I think the Labour Party have got to make their minds up. At the moment, the party posture is in favour of Trident. I very much hope it stays that way. But the leader is against. I think it's most likely that whatever proposition the Labour Party eventually land on, there will be a large number of Labour MPs who will support renewal of Trident.
But the Labour Party members overwhelmingly voted for an anti-Trident leader, so he has a mandate there to change their policy.
OK, well, that's all we have time for at the moment, and thank you both very much. Thanks to Sarah and Philip. Thank you very much for your time. Now, don't forget you can continue the debate online using the hashtag #LateDebate, and we'll be back next week where we'll be discussing the price of alcohol and whether the government should be doing more to tackle the UK's attitudes towards drinking. And joining us will be a representative from the NHS as well as members of Britain's pub trade. So from all of us here at Late Debate, good night.